The Game Boy Advance SP is the best console of all time, and if you disagree, you're wrong. Here's why. The Game Boy Advance SP burst onto the scene on the 23rd of March 2003, succeeding the vastly popular Game Boy Advance. The SP, standing for Special, addressed many of the issues that faced its predecessor, the main one being its lack of a backlight that made playing the Game Boy Advance outside virtually impossible. The SP featured a backlight with two settings, the first for usual brightness, and a second dimmer feature to save charge. Another improvement was the battery. The Advance ran at AA's, which meant you were constantly searching the house for batteries you didn't have, or stealthily jacking them from the TV remote. This was a right pain, and the SP saw this issue eradicated. A full charge gets you through a healthy 10 hours of game time, and you can play while you charge, so no complaints from anyone there. And might I add that after all those years under my bed, my SP still has charge. That's incredible. There's also the added bonus that the revolutionary clamshell design is cool as hell, and it keeps the console well protected. So let's take a look at the main competition. Here we have a graph showing a lineup of popular Nintendo consoles. For context, the SP went on sale for the same price as the original Game Boy Advance. Inflation adjusts these figures a little bit, but you get the picture. $100, £78. That's a steal for the amount of fun you got with this bad boy. For this reason, I just can't personally consider the likes of the Nintendo 3DS or the PSP for the title of the greatest handheld console of all time. Whilst they're great consoles in their own right, they just cost too much. The value for money simply isn't comparable, and don't even get me started on the Nintendo Switch. Moving on. After taking these higher end consoles off the table, we're left with more of the classics, and the picture becomes a little bit clearer. Straight off the bat, the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance are out. The original Game Boy was indeed the pioneer of handheld gaming, but it's too basic and clunky, and again, the lack of a backlight for the Game Boy Advance takes it out of the runnings to be considered a GOAT console. So we move on to the Nintendo DS, retailing for $50 extra. Whilst this console marked a key stepping stone into the next era of gaming, that's all it really was, a stepping stone. That bitch fugly. It's almost like they went back in time and took inspiration from the original Game Boy to kickstart the DS series. It's clunky looking, and it's the epitome of what you would imagine a kid's console to look like. It's certainly a step back from the slicker looking Game Boy Advance SP. What's crazy to think is that the PSP debuted a year later, although notably for an extra $100, but just take a look at the difference in design. It's just night and day. So we are ultimately left with two well priced consoles which rival the SP, the Nintendo DS Lite, which released in 2006, and the Nintendo DSi, which released in 2009. And for me, there's a clear winner. Although the Nintendo DSi featured a slightly larger display and other features like dual cameras, the DS Lite clearly trumps its bigger brother. It was $40 cheaper, but more importantly, it is backwards compatible with Game Boy Advance games, which opens up a whole new library of games to play. So it's the Game Boy Advance SP versus the Nintendo DS Lite. Battle of the Titans. But which is superior? Well, you know my take. Let me explain why. First up, let's talk about the design. The SP is a screen size of 2.9 inches with a 240 by 160 resolution, but the Nintendo DS Lite edges it out here with a 3.12 inch screen and a resolution of 256 by 192. The DS Lite also has dual screens, which certainly enables for a more immersive gaming experience, a strong advantage for the Lite here. As for the rest of the design, both use a clamshell case which protects the screens well. Unfortunately, the DS Lite's clamshell design has its pitfalls. The hinges are especially weak, and this was a commonly reported fault, and being a handheld console which is going to take some hits and bumps over the years, durability is certainly a factor which should be considered when choosing the best console, and the resilience of the DS Lite leaves a lot to be desired. The Lite's buttons are also a bit fiddly, not quite as comfortable as the SP. Many owners complained of cramp over lengthy gaming sessions, and whilst I did not really experience this for myself, it's still something that has to be considered. The SP certainly had a better D-pad of the two, which provided nice feedback when pressed. I actually ended up adding a controller-like grip to my SP, which further improved comfort while playing. It really was a great addition, and if you don't have one, I highly recommend it. A strong plus for both these consoles is the simplicity of their design. Being rather basic in nature, it is much easier to conduct repairs than for many of the newer, more expensive consoles. There are also lots of replacement parts available, which not only allows you to do these repairs yourself, but allows you to create modified consoles to fit your aesthetic. Another tick in the DS Lite column is the presence of a headphone jack. The previous Game Boys came with a headphone jack, yet for some reason, Nintendo opted to go without a headphone jack for the SP, and understandably this upset a lot of people. For me though, it really wasn't that much of a problem. As an obnoxious kid, I just let that shit rock whilst I was spanking Elite 4 all the livelong day, and when I was out I just had it muted. In retrospect though, I do really think that a headphone jack would have been hugely beneficial. Next up we go on to games, and this is a really close one to call. Both are backwards compatible, which is a huge plus, but each feature different gaming libraries. The SP is backwards compatible with the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Color, so there's the opportunity to play a lot of classics on top of the newer Game Boy games. The Nintendo DS Lite on the other hand is only backwards compatible with the newer Game Boy Advance games, so really this comes entirely down to personal preference of what kind of games you choose to go for. As for extra features, there really isn't that much to talk about. Both the SP and the DS Lite include the option for multiplayer gaming, but the SP also includes the option to connect to the GameCube via the link cable port. As the Nintendo DS Lite does not have this port, it lacks this function. I suppose another thing I should mention is the stylus, which is included as part of the package when you buy a Nintendo DS Lite. But let's be honest, how much use did that thing ever really get? Seemed like more of a gimmick than anything to me, but I understand it had its uses. From this comparison of the two consoles, I'm sure you can tell that things are pretty close between the pair. They're both great consoles, and I would expect most hardcore gamers to have at least one, or even both as part of their collection. I mean, let's take a look at how much we can snag them for today. The cheapest Game Boy Advance SP listings sell for around £20, and the DS Lite? Only 15, sometimes less. That's just mind-blowing. I think the fact that Nintendo has continued its line of DS consoles since has really driven down the price of the DS Lite. Not to say that the SP isn't incredibly cheap, because it is, but given it was the end of the line for the Game Boy, I feel like it is a more desirable console, and the price reflects this. It's no surprise that the Game Boy Advance SP has developed its own nostalgic selling niche within gaming. In fact, its predecessors are also in just as hot demand. The power of console modifications and custom artwork make these older consoles desirable once more. Who doesn't want their own retro console in the form of a backlit, one-of-a-kind original Game Boy? I'd also like to add that there is still love being shown for modified Nintendo DS Lites as well. There is a particular modder who creates half-shell Nintendo DS Lites with a light bar at the top. He has named his creation the Neon Advance. They ain't half pretty. And now, with all elements considered, it's time for an official crowning of the greatest portable console of all time. The winner is the Game Boy Advance SP. Okay, so you knew from the start that the SP edges it, but what a console. The fact that many people opt to play the SP, even sporadically, over the incredibly advanced newer consoles, is just a testament to how awesome the SP really is. It truly was a revolutionary point in gaming, and it's sad to see that Nintendo have never attempted to create a successor. However, what really has the kid in me excited of late is the fact that a company by the name of Analog have seen this gap in the market and produced what is essentially a modern day Game Boy named the Analog Pocket. This thing is like a Game Boy on steroids! Coming in at a hefty $199 in 2020, the Analog Pocket will feature a flawless display of 1600 by 1440 resolution. That's 10 times the resolution of the original Game Boy. Analog has also acknowledged the needs of retro gaming by enabling backwards compatibility of all Game Boy games. What's more, with cartridge adapters, the Pocket can also play games from the Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket Color and the Atari Lynx. That's unmarked territory right there. If this wasn't enough, the Pocket also has a digital audio workstation called Nanoloop, which empowers our owners to create their own music. And oh, did I forget to mention that with the Analog Dock, the Pocket can connect directly to your HD TV? And you can play on the big screen with your controllers via USB? What? What is happening? The Analog Pocket is about to change the portable console game, and I can't wait to see if it delivers. It looks incredibly promising, only time will tell if it lives up to the hype. So the SP takes the crown of best portable console of all time for me, but I want to know what handheld console you think is the best. Despite laying out all of the specs of these machines to do battle, I can't help but acknowledge my obvious bias towards the Game Boy Advance SP. I've always been a Game Boy player at heart. It's the console that really piqued my interest in gaming. I used the Nintendo DS Lite much later on in my gaming journey, and whilst I thought it was really neat, I never really had memorable gaming experiences. Beginning with the Advance and then transitioning to the SP, it was everything I wanted at the time. A simple, sleek, durable console that I could play anywhere. In fact, if I really think about it, I don't think I've ever had quite as much fun with any console or game as I did with the Game Boy Advance SP. I reckon I racked up 500 to 1000 hours of game time between my Pokemon Leaf Green and Pokemon Emerald games alone, which are probably my two favourite games of all time. As much as I enjoy games like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 on the PlayStation 3 and The Last of Us on the PlayStation 4, I just don't think the experience was quite as exhilarating. Now, was this because I was a kid? Maybe. But all I know is that to me, the Game Boy Advance SP is the best handheld console of all time.